It being
Thank you.
6 o'clock on Wednesday, March 20th, I will start the Finance Committee meeting. We have 5 of us here in person, and we have 2 online on Zoom, so that we have a full committee tonight. When we take our votes, I will do a roll call to make sure we get them correct with people online. The first thing I'd like to do is see if there are anybody that would like to make any public comments before we get into the business of the meeting. Seeing none, I'll move on to the reserve fund request. I think you all saw the email that came from Rob, our facilities director. And we have a request for a transfer from the reserve fund, looking for $11,000 to cover an $8,000 emergency repair of some leaking sprinkler systems at the fire station. There's some more work to be done, so he would like another $3,000. The balance in the account is about $36,000, I believe. Yeah, $37,676 remains in the account. I personally, I guess the only question I have, Rob, is the $8,000 we've already spent. And have we spent any more than that?
We just finished up the last piece of the puzzle. So there was they replaced the pump and some of the piping that was actually leaking, and then there were some components that were external that needed replaced. On doing that, we found out that the internal components that you can't see because they're packed inside needed to be replaced as well. So there's another $3,500 about, give or take, coming in invoices that I don't have yet. They literally just finished it. So, 11,000 is an even number, but it might be like 10,500.
11,500.
Well, it could be, just depends. But I think it's closer to 10,500/11.
Okay. I think a lot of the people that have been around here very long know my attitude. I tend to, early in the fiscal year, not like spending this reserve fund money on anything except real emergencies. This one does sound like a real emergency. And also, when we get towards the end of the year, I say we might as well spend the money to move it on and not have a lot of more requests. With that being said, I will open it up to the members of the committee for their questions of Rob or comments. Anybody online, Deb, or no questions up there? Okay. Can I have a motion then?
I make a motion to authorize $11,000 from the reserve fund for the police station repairs.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Michael, I.
David, I.
Jason,
Elaine, aye.
Eric, I.
Debbie, I.
Approved 7-0-0. Thank you.
thank you guys.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, everybody.
And I think what I'd like to do now, since our town clerk is here for just the elected officials job that we have, I think that I would like to do that now and get that out of the way before we get into the detail of the budgets. I put together this little analysis to get us started. To refresh everybody's mind, the elected official salaries is a separate warrant article at the annual town meeting. It delineates the $20,500 worth of stipends that go to the various officials, the moderator, selectmen, board of health, assessors, water commissioners, planning board, wastewater commissioners. I just listed that here because I wanted everybody to see what goes into that warrant article. But these dollars have already been included in the budgets that we've been reviewing. So that when that warrant article is done, the appropriation is only for the increase amount that we vote or recommend for the other elected, the full-time elected official positions, the town clerk. And now, since we have the same individual as the elected treasurer and collector, we really only have two salaries. So what I've done here is I've listed before I do that, I'll give Mr. Gallagher, did you want to say anything since you came to the meeting?
Just, I've been the town clerk for 10 years next month, which is really something. Started out with a very low salary compared to all of the other department heads in town. It's taken me the first 9 years it took me to get to a point where there was some kind of structure to it, having had the salary surveys done and the job descriptions redone. Last year, it was determined that I should be at grade 11, step 3, which is what I got. So like everyone else in town that either gets a step increase through the union or wage and personnel or through their contract, which I had on occasion haven't been able to get. This year, I'm expecting or hoping to get, the step 4 like everyone else, the next step like everyone else. So it would be grade 11, step 4, because there's finally some structure to it after 10 years.
Okay, and I guess one of the things I should have said before I really started here, that this is an assignment that the finance committee has had forever because of the fact that these elected official salaries aren't part of the wage and personnel system here in town. And it's always fallen on the finance committee to make recommendations concerning these. It's not something that I like doing. I don't believe it's a financial management responsibility. However, we're doing it. So to get us started here, what I did was list the current salaries for these two individuals and what the salaries would be at an increase of 2.5%, an increase of 3%, an increase of 3.5%, or an increase of 4%. I went along with these, came up with these numbers based on the fact that most of our unions were looking at 3.5% increases next fiscal year is the cost of living negotiated rate. So with that, I'll open the floor up for discussion.
Okay. Well, you said you wanted to go to a step 4. What does that translate to in the form of a percentage?
I don't know what the percentage is. I can figure that out.
Do you have the dollar
Between
amount?
3.5 and 4. I just looked at it.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, it's like a step that everybody else,
It's-
whatever the step is for everybody
The
else.
number for step 4, I have the salary, I think it's pulled up, the 89,791 is
Yeah,
the,
that's what I was told. Step 4 was 89,791. Step 3 was 86,496. And I don't know that, I believe that's without the COLA, without any cost.
that's last year, that's
Yeah,
the step on last year's
Yes,
bylaw.
exactly.
So for everyone else, the step is automatic except for you,
Yes,
and then they would get a cost of living increase on top of that.
right. And I have had years past where I didn't get the increase and I didn't get COLAs either.
Point of clarification, that step is once a year. I know some organizations, the first 3 years, it's every year, then years 4 through 6, it's every 2 years.
I'm
Is
not
it year
even,
for year?
I'm not even sure about that. That's more of a human resource.
Yeah, it is a step, it's a step.
I would assume
increase
it's every year.
Every year?
Yeah,
And how many steps are in your category?
I think there's 10.
10?
Yeah, there's 10.
So typically the I
So
said this
10
as
years
somebody
at
who
max
works
is-
on a municipal salary grid like this, typically it's annual.
Any other thoughts? Well, again, keep us rolling here.
How long have we, just out of curiosity, how long have we had the stipend set at that number?
Oh, for a long time. And if that was gonna be changed, I wouldn't recommend us changing it. That's the Board of Selectmen's
Yeah, I'm not-
responsibility.
Yeah.
Curiosity.
In my opinion, that they're the ones who would make the recommendation, and then we would either say that we agreed with it or we didn't.
Yeah, curiosity.
My,
Looks like 3.5%.
I was gonna recommend a 3.5% increase. This step would be just, about $270 more than the 3.5%. So I, for one member, would be comfortable at that step 4 number. Any other thoughts or comments?
I guess my only comment is that everyone else, all the other employees that fall under wage and personnel get the step plus a COLA, a
Right.
cost of living increase.
Yeah, and it's always been a suggestion from the finance committee, and there were a number of years where I suffered compared to others. And I was excited last year to finally get the wage and personnel study done, so that I was set at a grade and I was set at a step, so that I could start to understand where I'm gonna be in the next year. I mean, everybody knows they're gonna be a step in COLA, but I never know that.
And there's always been the philosophy too, that the elected officials are a little bit different than the union people and the wage and personnel people who report directly to a department manager or to a town administrator or somebody, that they have rules and regulations about vacation, sick time, personal time off. Elected officials have much more flexibility. So I think that's often been one of the justifications, that there aren't automatic step increases. There aren't automatic cost of living increases. So since I've been on the finance committee, we've tried to do a reasonable, in effect, a merit / cost of living increase for the elected officials.
Do you mind if I check on that? Do you mind?
Sure.
Yeah, there has been always this mystique that the two elected officials have unlimited sick and unlimited vacation days. I've always asked, when am I going to take all of those days when I have so much work to do? I had one year where I had 8 elections. It was like a record for a town clerk, 8 elections in 1 year. So, I don't take any more vacation than anyone else in the building. I'm not out sick any more than anybody else in the building. And I'm certainly not abusing any of it on any. So, by the time the year comes around and you do all your work, you have basically the same. The one thing is that there are also things that as a full-time employee, and I'd love to go to wage personnel and get on there and not have to worry about this stuff. But if I fall down in the office, or if I have a box that I'm taking ballots off and it hits me in the head, I'm not eligible for workers' comp. I have to have my own workers' comp. I'm not eligible for that through the town. There's other things too. Not that I'm going to get laid off because I'm elected, but if there was ever a certain issue or situation, I can't go and collect unemployment. There's things that go back and forth. But you can't take unlimited sick and vacation days here if you're going to get your job done. And I feel like I have done that for the last 10 years.
I agree that, everyone is different, and we thank you for that input. I just did the quick and dirty calculation. The 89,791 is a 3.8% increase over the FY24, the current salary. So that I'm comfortable personally with either with the step increase to keep it in line with what the wage and personnel study classification is. Again, any other, any comments, David,
No,
Mike?
I'm good at 3.5.
Elaine?
The step 4.
Yeah, I'm fine there too.
You're recommending step 4, right?
I'm recommending step 4,
You went
yes.
3.5, and now you went up to the step 4, which is 3.8.
3.8.
Yeah.
I can support that.
Either one.
Deb or Derek, any thoughts?
So when I look at the budget, it says 86,496, and you're recommending more than that?
No, that's last year.
Yes, how it works is that the prior salary is in the budget, and any increase that we grant to them goes on this elected officials separate article on the warrant. So that at the 3.5% level, there would be $6,289 added in on that article. Not the full salary, just the difference. But it's a separate article. It's not part of the budget article.
Oh, okay, thank you.
My preference
right.
is towards the step as opposed to just the 3.5, but that's my opinion there.
Yeah. Mike, do you have what the step is for the
What's-
treasurer collector at the 93,212?
What's the exact number?
I believe that if I'm reading this right, the 93,212, I think, was grade 11, step 5.
Okay,
If we were to go to grade 11, step 6, it's gonna go to 96,763. Nope, that's not. Which I get at, so that would increase the 3.5% number to 186,554. For an increase of 60. Let's call it just under $6,800.
that's what I was getting, exact number, because that's
$6,846 worth of an increase from last year for those new positions.
6846. All right, I'll make the motion that the finance committee recommend salaries of 89,791 for the town clerk, $96,763 for the treasurer collector position, for a total of $186,554, with a difference of $6,846 to be appropriated on the elected officials warrant article at the annual town meeting.
Second.
Do we need to put the stipends in that motion too, or do you want to do it separate?
No, we don't need to put them in because they're already in.
Oh.
See, we're not gonna be appropriating that.
Second.
All in favor, Carl, I.
Michael, I.
David, I.
Jason,
Elaine, I.
Derek, I.
Debbie, I.
Thank you all
Approved,
very much.
recommended 700.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
The next item that we're gonna do is the review of the Board of Health budget. If you'd like to move up to the table, you're welcome to.
I actually met with Joyce and went over her budget with her, some of the things that caught my eye. And Joyce is feeling new, so some of the historical questions I had were best guesses. But for, again, salaries, wage and personnel, I asked what the increase was from FY 23 actuals of the 89,000 up to the 119 now. And what that does is it's both Joyce's salary in addition to the nurse's salary. And the nurses Nurses can be up to almost $29,000, and the difference would be Joyce's salary about 94. So that's it, that's that. Consultant services had dropped from 22 actuals of 19,000 to 3,500. And that's because back at that time, there was a consultant who was working more hours because it wasn't a full-time health agent. The healthcare services, I was really questioning because that went down from 5,100 to 500. My question was that enough to get her through the year? And Joyce felt that under the, how she's operating now, that the $500 is sufficient. Then I asked about training seminars, jumping from about 634 to 1,500. And that's because of the cost of seminars and like everything else is increasing. Office supplies. Let's see what the office supplies reduced. The office supplies were reduced from 5,200 to 3,000. And again, Joyce felt that was sufficient. She does believe she may have to buy a phone for 900. So she'll do her best to stay within that. Dues and memberships. I just question the increases, and the same with travel and meetings. She's using her car more frequently now, and a lot of the meetings are typically held out in Western Mass. So all that, I'm comfortable supporting this budget.
I have no problems with the budget as it's developed over the last 3 years, 4 years. I would point out that, you know, back in 2020, 21, we've gone from 117,020 to 191,000 now, but that's true of all of our budgets, and I've just been pointing it out because it's something that I continue to be concerned about, the sustainability of these kinds of increases going forward. That being said,
I just got one quick question, Joyce. Hey, the tobacco control service line item,
Yes.
what is it?
Oh, that's a good question. So we are required by the state to do what's called a compliance check for anybody that's a vendor of tobacco. And what that entails is sending, we have a commission that we work with. We have to pay for it. They send an undercover, an underage person in to purchase or attempt to purchase cigarettes from these vendors. It's a way to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be
Yeah.
doing and not selling to children. So that's what it's.
Okay, the only reason I ask is historically, it was only like $300 or so.
Oh,
I don't know, we bumped it to 1,500 in FY '24. And then year to date, as of December, you hadn't used any money there, and then we're asking for 1,500 this year. So I don't know.
I can kind of speak to that a little bit. So I started literally Memorial Day. So I haven't even completed a full year, and I have worked over the last number of months to get the office back to where it needs to be with the sort of frequent changing of the guard. There's a lot of things that went undone, that weren't completed, kind of fell by the wayside. I think one, because of change of staff, but also that some people may not have been aware that they were supposed to be conducting these
Yeah.
things. And so I would imagine that that's why you see fluctuations. And in addition to that, during the time that we were going through COVID, there were no, you go to seminars, you weren't traveling anywhere, everything was quite limited. So those expenditures would have been considerably less.
Gotcha. All right, so FY '25, you're gonna need that money.
Yes, unfortunately.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
And I'll just have you know, I did turn money in the end of the year, this last fiscal year. I gave money back. We don't need it. We give it back.
I'm all set.
I'll also point out here for those who asked the question about the elected official salaries, you'll see that there's $4,200 here. That's the stipends for the Board of Health members. Any other questions or comments? Motion, please.
Gonna make a motion for Personal services at 174,755. Expenses at 16,580 for a total budget of 191,335.
Second,
All in favor, Carl, I.
Michael, I.
David, I.
Jason, I.
Elaine, I.
Derek, I.
Debbie, I.
Recommended approval as budgeted for 700. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was nice meeting all of you.
Council on Aging.
Here.
Did anybody get a chance to meet with this department? We probably didn't, did we? Deb or Mike, okay. I'll get us started.
No, I did not.
I'll get us started. I looked at it this morning. The basic budget was $417,000 in total last year. It's $434,000 this year, for a 4% increase. The budget is made up of $393,000 in salaries and $40,000 in expenses. I'd just like an update on what the head count is. We have the one director right here.
That's me. Yep.
And what else is in your budget now for people?
So we have 4 full-time and we have 5 part-time people.
Okay, the full-time,
The
what?
full-time, that would be myself.
Yeah.
We have a social worker. We have an assistant director of council on aging. And we have a transportation coordinator. Of those, one of them is in the KTEU clerical. That's the transportation coordinator.
Okay,
Of the part-time, we have the chef. We have also 1, 2, 3, 4 van drivers that are, all 4 of them are part of the KTEU labor union.
okay. And that's been pretty standard for a while now, hasn't it?
Well, we've actually cut back on a position. We had a program and activity coordinator. It's on the books, but we're going to be going back to wage and personnel to have it removed because that was the position that Holly was in. A person had vacated it. Holly was doing social media. Her job description, there was a vacant job description for assistant director, which as it turns out, was doing what Holly was already doing and doing what the person that was doing activities and programs was doing. So wage and personnel, approved the assistant director's position. And once we get through town meeting, we'll be going back to have them remove the position for program and activity coordinator.
Okay. My only other comment was what I've been making on every department. In 2020, we had $306,000. We actually dropped down for, maybe we had somebody didn't work the full year or something, to 263,000 in 21. But even if I go from the 306 to the current of 433, that's an average increase of 7+% per year. One of the reasons I'm harping on these things is that I was told at a couple of meetings that the schools always get everything, and that the departments don't get treated fairly. Well, I can tell you that I would say every department I'm looking at, we talk about a 3.5% increase at the beginning of a budget year, and the average over a 5-year period runs anywhere from 5% to 12%. So that I'm this isn't reflecting on anybody. It's just stating a fact that this particular budget has been increasing at an average of 7+% a year for 5 years.
Yes, that's been on the wage. I can see where your concern is on the wage side. I do understand that. You'll be happy to know that on the expense side, we're going up $1,100 on expenses. That's total.
Well, and that's another comment that I've made to not only this year, but other years, that I say that when we're most departments, police, fire, probably the two biggest examples, you have a big number for your labor, your salaries. And so I don't want to nickel and dime people on expenses because I want them to have the resources to do the job when I'm paying for the salary grade. So I do recognize that I think across the town, we do a pretty good job of controlling expenses and trying to minimize the costs on those lines.
Yeah, I just,
Elaine, any
a
comments?
couple of questions. What positions are in wage and personnel? It's gone up for almost 60,000 since 23.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
What-
You're asking for what, a position that was at something or other?
No, what positions make up the wage and personnel
I'm sorry.
salary line items?
So the wage and personnel positions are the director, the assistant director, and the social worker. The other full-time person is in the KTEU clerical.
Okay, so the $20,000 jump for the clerical is the transportation person. I'm going from 23 actuals. It was 36,000, now it's 54.
Right,
That's one person.
I don't have that particular, I'm looking at a different chart. My chart starts at your fiscal year 24 hourly wages, so I don't have 23 in front of me.
Okay, but that line item is one individual.
Transportation?
That's what I'm asking. The clerical,
Transportation coordinator is one person, yes.
and that's the one person is, that clerical union salary is one person.
It's one full-time person.
Okay. That's all I have.
Anyone else?
I don't think there was a change, but so the radio communications, I thought we were going to tie this in with an upgrade with the police and fire all on
I
one
know, We
frequency.
tried. but
We didn't do it?
Yeah, no, what ended up happening was there was a problem with we go outside of Kingston. And
Okay.
they don't, so they're staying right within, so we couldn't hop onto their system.
Okay.
Because we go between Duxbury, Kingston, and Duxbury, Kingston and Plymouth. So it's the minute we go out of town, we can't use the system.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Motion, please.
I'll make a motion for personal services at 393,016, expenses at 40,368, for a total of 433,384.
Second. All in favor? Aye, Carl.
Michael, yeah.
David, yes.
Jason, yes.
Elaine, yes.
Eric, yes.
Debbie, yes.
Finance Committee recommends the Council on Aging budget as presented at 700. Thank you.
Have a great
you.
evening, everyone.
The next one, the library. Step up here, Donald. Time flies. How long have you been the librarian now?
August will be 3 years,
3 years.
and it's been great.
Did anybody meet with you?
Yes, Elaine and Derek.
Okay. Elaine, you wanna,
Derek's actually gonna run with this one.
Derek, gonna get us started?
Yeah, I'm just trying to pull up the document here. Yeah, so Elaine and I met with Donald last week. I'm just gonna say Friday. As was noted in a prior meeting, the office or the books and periodicals line item needs to be maintained at roughly 125, and this is Donald, what's the amount that it needs to be funded at vis-a-vis the budget?
It needed to be funded at the 125,000. for the books, for our 16% requirement for state certification. Normally, the increase for that line item is not normally that large, but with the implementation of the salary scale, what that did was up the overall budget for the library. So that increased the book budget requirement. So actually for fiscal 24 that we're currently in, we are going to be at a shortage for that requirement. So I'm looking at other funding sources within the accounts to make up the difference.
Just to make sure all my members here are looking at the right one, this budget was revised. We got a copy a month ago or a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it was revised 212.
I think the only revision was this particular line item.
That's what we have there, the
Yeah.
125.
So,
The
Hey, look at that.
116.
okay.
That being said, Elaine and I did note that there were reductions elsewhere made to the budget within the non-personnel area that we were appreciative of, just in an effort to maintain fiscal responsibility. But again, to highlight, as everyone has been, a very large increase within wage and personnel. Elaine, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything further.
That wraps it up.
The one thing that I, noticed, and I just knew it anyhow, but this is a department that I think we have to remember that back in fiscal 21, there was $150,000 order of magnitude reduction. So that, going into fiscal 22, 65K of that was recovered. Fiscal 23, 50K was recovered. And fiscal 24, approximately another 50K. So that it took 4 years to really get back to the level that we were at back in fiscal 19 and 20. And so if you're looking at it that way, I kind of look at it that, it's over that 5-year period or 4-year period, the average increase is only about 2.5%.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Comments?
Just to fully vet the issue. So on the books and periodicals, Don, for 125. So we say it's a mandate. What is the penalty for non-compliance?
So if there are certain requirements that we have to fulfill, we have to, first of all, for population size, you have to have a library director who has a master's degree. We have to be open so many hours a week. It's a minimum of 40 hours for our population size. You have to offer free library services to folks. You can't charge people to check books out and stuff. And with the materials budget, it has to be 16% of your overall budget, which is a quirky thing because basically it is a factor in it's a self-perpetuating formula. So, like if general expenses went up in another area, that would force the book budget to go up, but then that would then counterbalance and force it to go up again. So it is kind of an odd thing. So that's why each year you'll see some reduction somewhere else in order to make it balance so that the book budget is only at the 16%.
Right. But to go back to the question, what's the penalty for being in non-compliance?
So the penalty of it would be that we would be decertified. We would lose the option to get state aid. We would not be able to have reciprocal borrowing with other libraries within the network. So like if somebody went to, Duxbury or Plymouth, they would not be able to use their library cards there. And we would not be able to apply for any LSTA grants.
If I remember correctly, when this came up a few years ago, the penalty of not residents being able to borrow from other towns is probably more significant than the state aid that, the state aid, 25K, maybe 30K.
So it has gone up a bit. I think this year in total, we're going to be looking at like 35.
Okay, well, that.
And a lot of that is based upon our statistics. So the more services we provide to not, non-residents, that actually plays into the formula to get more state aid.
How about your facility, the building? I know one time we were always talking about there was this problem and that problem, a roof problem, or this and that. Do you feel it's under control, or are we gonna be?
I think that the current status of the building has been sufficient. We haven't had any major, roof issues or anything like that during the 2+ years that I've been there. I do think that we do need to look forward, for growth in the offerings of programs and things like that. So there will be some renovations done. I think that there has been one issue, for example, is flooding because of the angle of the parking lot. All the rainwater comes to the front entrance. So during the recent rainstorms, I think it was in December, the grates there were not sufficient and the water actually came into the library. So some of those things need to be looked at, which I've discussed with, facilities and highway.
I would encourage you to be strong with facilities and the town administration on any kind of capital improvements, building enhancements, because we have certain departments in town that just beat down and end up getting, more than my humble opinion, fair share of town capital expenditures. So I think it's a case of sometimes the squeaky wheel getting the grease. So I encourage you when you need something, or there's something like an emergent, not even an emergency, but hey, if we don't take care of this grading in the next 2 years, it will be an emergency. So I encourage you to do that. Any other comments or questions from Finance Committee members? All right, I'll make a motion to approve recommend approval of the library budget at $618,635 for salaries, $168,732 for expenses, for a total of $787,367.
So,
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Michael, aye.
David, aye.
Jason,
Elaine, I.
Derek, I.
Debbie, I.
All right, thank you, Donald.
Thanks, John.
Thank you,
We
guys.
recommend approval of your budget as presented, 700. Conservation Department, Matt Pinella's online. I thought maybe I'd just not do this budget at all. Hi, Matt.
Carl, my guy, how are you?
Glad to see you.
I'd recommend that Priscilla went first next year, but I think that's a moot point. So I don't think anybody went through my budget with me to memory, but there's not much to go through. So what do you got?
I went through it briefly this morning myself. Saw that your total budget for last year was 140K. It's 145K this year for a 3.7% increase. You have a conservation agent being yourself. You have an assistant. That takes care of most of the salaries. Land management expense budget of 5K. I'm sure you'd like that to be 55K, but the 5K seems in line with what this conservative guy would probably suggest. So in fact, you actually, town administrator reduced you by $1,000 on that one.
That scoundrel.
So, so again, and you've heard me, I'm doing it to everyone. This
Agent
budget
personnel.
this budget has gone from $100,000 to $145,000, which is an average increase over the 5 years of just about 8%. So it's another department that's getting treated fairly, in my opinion. The only other question I have is, how about grants? Do you have any grants in process, or are you doing stuff now with grants money?
Always. That's what you get for that raise in wage and personnel, is like the best in the business grant team between the two of us. So nothing that I can report that we've received in major numbers. We've received a few grants recently in the like $20,000-$30,000 range. But you have to go back to, I think, FY23, we got about $1 million in grants. So we do all right.
Yeah, I'll take the $20,000-$30,000 grants occasionally, as long as they do something that isn't gonna cost me $5,000 every year going forward. I don't like getting
Absolutely.
$25,000 grant and then find out it's gonna cost me 10 more every year going forward for the next 20 years.
No, I think we've been pretty lucky getting a lot of grants recently that don't require any town match, and for the most part have been taking care of things that aren't going to pop up and be problematic. I'll agree that we've been treated fairly. Making the move from an admin assistant to assistant agent has been fantastic. Both of the people that I've had in that position since we made the switch have been great. And the grants that we got most recently were Juliana, that I've been just putting her on a lot of grant projects and with good success. So I'm happy.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. And you're interested in trying to get a grant to buy some more cranberry bogs?
Absolutely. But I don't know if I'd call it buying cranberry bogs, but trying to dismantle them and put them back into better shape.
Okay, because I wanted to apply for the cranberry bog manager's job if you were going to be doing that.
No. I'm with you. We're not trying to take anything on that requires more town, finances and responsibility. So anything we do there, if there's going to be an agricultural component, we'd be looking to either lease that out to a nonprofit or directly to a farmer.
All right.
You talk and I'm listening, Carl.
Any questions or concerns from finance committee members? Motion, please. I move that the finance committee recommend approval of the conservation department budget at $136,404 for salaries, $8,250 for expenses, for a total of $144,654.
Second.
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Michael, I.
David, I.
Jason, I.
Elaine, I.
Derek, I.
Debbie, I.
Your budget is recommended as presented by 700. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Now we have the planning board. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. I have news.
I'm
I want to give you $21,899 to play with. Our full-time planner / admin assistant has been working out really, really well. Unfortunately, with the slowdown in development in the town to almost a halt, she's offered and we've agreed to put that position at halftime. So with that, that's the number I firmed up today with HR in Keith.
so how much was that again?
So we'd like you to cut $21,899 from line item 5113, clerical and union salaries. I don't want to cut the overtime right now because if something happens and if I need coverage for some reason for meetings, I need to keep the overtime in there because it could be someone else who's getting paid overtime to do well.
Okay, so my notes here were one town planner and one full-time assistant. That full-time assistant's going to halftime.
Mhm.
Okay. And I also noted that the budget for last year was 166K, and now it's going down to 152K, I think, so that looks reasonable. And again, this is now somewhat of a moot point that the 5-year increase was from 101K to 174K, or an average of 12%. So now it's probably an average of 7% thereabouts. So I don't have any other questions or concerns with the planning budget. Anybody else?
Yeah, just a question, with, is the full-time plan, part-time, full-time to part-time, is that involve the unions at all, or
We've
is,
already reviewed it.
And there-
Everything's signed
okay.
off on it.
okay,
Good question.
just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Okay, so. I'll make the motion with, personal services, less the 21,899,
I got the number,
okay,
145,853.
yeah,
I
that's what I
agree.
came up with.
Mhm.
And then total, I have 151,728.
You got it.
Okay, that's the motion.
Second,
All in favor? Aye, Carl.
Michael, hi.
David, I.
Jason,
Elaine, I.
Debbie, I. Oh, can you hear me? Debbie, I.
Yes.
I think it was David.
Mike Buss, Mike,
Oh,
but he said thumbs up.
Derek said aye. So we.
Oh,
recommend-
yeah, I talked over Debbie. Sorry, Derek, we need it.
We're recommending approval is listed with the reduction for the one half-time person. Thank you.
Have a good night.
two.
Joe. Recreation Department, Sue, step up. Good evening. And probably nobody met with with Susan either. Okay, well, I'll start it off here since I took a look at it this morning. We're looking at a budget for 25 of 408K versus 24 of 397, or a 2.85% increase. We have one recreation director, Sue, and you have one full-time assistant, right? And what else do you have? All the rest of these, the summer hires, the part-time?
Most of them, we did add last year a program and property coordinator position of about 25 hours a week. And that was to cover our evenings building opening. The custodial services had shifted a few years back. And so we had no longer had anybody to cover the building during evening hours, and we had programming. So that was changed in our budget last year. So we have that position as well. And then the rest of them are all seasonal positions.
And is that working out, having the 25-hour-a-week person?
It is, yes.
And do they work every night?
Monday through Friday, sometimes on the weekends as well. So we actually have two individuals that are doing that part-time. So it's not one person. So it's not currently a benefit eligible position, but it's, so yes, we're covering the night hours and then the weekends as needed.
So two people are splitting the 25 hours?
Correct. So it's 25 through the operating budget, and then there's another 10 or so that comes out of the revolving fund when we do the weekend hours. So it could be upwards of 35, but yes, two people are splitting that.
So that's all encompassing, I'm looking at from 83 to 25, it's a 70,000 increase in salaries for wage and personnel. 23 was 186 and 25 is 256.
So we added that position in, and then the increase on the seasonal staff positions as well.
How much was the additional position? Because that, I mean, it's 70,000.
That was,
Ballpark.
well, the additional position of 25 hours a week is ballpark about 32,000. And then the rest of it encompasses so just for clarification, I know last year we returned over almost 11,000, I believe, in our wage and personnel line item. We do have in our budget lifeguard / park staff, so that the last few years, really since COVID, we've had a challenge getting lifeguards down there and a waterfront director. We continue to put that in the budget just because we advertise for that every year, because we should have those positions down at that property. But unfortunately, there's just a shortage all over the country of those positions. So what we've done is increase the park staff. Those
rates are a little bit less on that. But we do keep it in the budget because we would like to be able to have those positions. And then obviously we return it when it's not used.
How much are we flowing through the revolving account on an annual basis?
I think
Approximately.
I have to double check. I think we are at 500,000 or over than that comes through there, that comes in and goes out every year. That's a town meeting vote. So we have to go if we want to change that amount, but I think that's what it's between 500 and 600. I don't have the exact number in front of me. That we can.
Yeah, I recognize that, but are we actually utilizing that all? Are we actually
I
flowing that
don't think
much?
so. This year we'll be really close or over, close
Okay.
to that amount. So we may need to request an increase. So just for example, for last year comparatively, as far as programming, so that's specific to programming and some of the properties that those programs fall under. So last year we offered 494 programs and approximately 5,800 registrants. This year to date, we've offered 393 programs at 3,200 projected based off of last year's numbers. Number of 581 programs will offer and about 6,400 registrations.
And those programs are self-supporting.
Correct.
What goes through the revolving account pays for it.
Correct. And then also some properties, not big capital projects, but some maintenance can go through there if they're specific to a program. So for example, the tennis courts down at the Reef, our pickleball program is down there. So we are able to use some funds to do relining or resurfacing depending on the cost of that. So we do utilize those funds for that as well.
Speaking of pickleball, I read an article in the newspaper this week that actually taking places like the mall, okay, and doing indoor pickleball courts. I also read about Braintree. The neighbors are complaining vociferously that there's too much noise in the
noise
pickleball court. And how about KYSO? They in effect fund some of the field maintenance or stuff like that,
They
right?
do. So the athletic complex, the budget is approximately 180,000 or so per year right now is what we projected. And the town, you can see in our budget here, the town allocates $56,700. There's a cell tower revenue that also goes towards that. It goes up every year, but I think last year it was around 34,000. And then whatever the balance is, the KYSO continuous sports organization. And it went up astronomically last year from about 48,000. They're at 66,000 a year that they're contributing just for their user fees. And I just want to make sure everybody knows also they contribute additional money for capital planning, capital expenses. So sometimes if there's a project that needs to take place and there's not funding available, they support that. So one example of that is that we just found out we have a situation with some of our wells.
Right.
So KYSO is also supporting a portion of that cost as well. So
Above and beyond what CPC is going to pay for.
Correct. Yeah. So
It's one of the things that I've never been too enthusiastic about, or I don't like, but I know it's been like this forever. It's really difficult to get a handle on what these total costs are. That, you've got a budget here, you've got KYSO contributing something, you've got a revolving fund, so that you look at this and you say it's $400,000. Well, to me, I kind of like to look at it that the benefit to the town is probably more like $1 million, because you've got all of this other revenue coming in and rolling through, and it's, I guess, just the accountant in me likes to see everything in one place, so I know what it really is. And
There's the accountability factor too.
yes, yeah, accountability and control.
it's available. I mean, obviously the revolving fund it has a
Separate account.
It has a report too, so the accountability is there, because I mean, if you can look at that anytime and see where the money comes in and what money is going out, so there's that accountability for the budget, to be able to see what is being funneled through that particular account.
Right.
It's just like managing two budgets, basically, or within a department.
All right, I don't have any other questions or concerns. A motion, please. Somebody else.
I make a motion that, we approve $327,971 for personnel and $80,225 for expenses for a total of $408,196.
Second.
All in favor, Kyle, I.
Michael, I.
David, I.
Jason,
Elaine, I.
Eric, I.
Debbie, I.
Thank you, Sue. You recommend approval at the 408,000 that you requested.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
And now we have the simplest department that I should have speeded up so you didn't have to stay here. I'm sorry. I think, does everybody know Priscilla Brackett, our, I don't know what to call her. I call her a veterans agent, but, she certainly has, she has run the veteran show for the 12 years that I've been involved. This budget increased 22K this year, and it's basically increasing the veterans benefits line, but that's really a net increase of only 5K. It's 75%, isn't it?
That's
We
right.
get reimbursed.
Mhm.
See, from filling out those forms as treasurer,
right.
I remember some of it.
Certifications, that's right.
So that everybody understands that the line, the biggest line item here, well, if I was on the right page, of the so-called medical ordinary benefits of $220,000, which is that the one? that
Yes,
changed?
that's
Let me
increased
get the
to
right page
240.
here. 240,000. Okay, approximately 75% of that is reimbursed by the Veterans Administration. The rest of the salary line, again, to remind people that in effect, we get a benefit here that we don't have a full-time veterans agent that we have to, pay top salary to. We actually use the Plymouth veterans agent. Is our legally or technically, whatever you want to call it, our agent. And Priscilla, and have you gone back to part-time?
I'm part-time and Den Forbes is also part-time.
Den is part-time, so that at one time Priscilla was part-time and we had another gentleman in here. And then when he left, she became full-time, and now she's gone back to full-time, and she's breaking in her successor maybe.
Well, I will let you know that both Den and I are leaving in July of this next year. I
Oh,
just put in my retirement.
so another,
So we'll be in fluctuation. The town administrator and HR is in the midst or has just begun making plans. So I
Excellent.
really can't speak to the wage and personnel.
yes, I understand that. So as far as I'm concerned, that this budget has had very little change in the 10 years I've been involved, and certainly the 5 years that we're looking at the listing here. I didn't have any other questions or comments.
No.
Mike, you want to give me a motion on this one?
I move the finance committee recommend approval of the veteran services budget for fiscal 25. Personal services in the amount of $59,729. Other expenses, $249,025. Total budget, $308,754.
Yes.
Slap throat.
308,754.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor? Kyle, I.
Michael, I.
David, I.
Jason,
Elaine, I.
Eric, I.
Debbie, I.
Thank you. 700. We recommend approval of budget.
And thank you for all your years.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations on the project out front moving forward.
Yeah, we'll be breaking grounds shortly. It's very exciting. Thank you again.
Thanks.
Okay. That brings us to the update on the school budgets. I had hoped to be able to distribute some documents. I actually have the line item detailed budgets for both Silver Lake and for the local schools. I'm a little bit reluctant to distribute them tonight because there are so many changes that are in process. There was a public meeting last Thursday night at Silver Lake. I went to it. Two of the selectmen were there for Kingston. It was all three towns, local school committees, plus the Silver Lake Regional School Committee. The long and short of it was the first pass of both budgets had approximately 15% increase for Kingston when you consider the assessments and the local. Okay. One of the Silver Lake School Committee members right there in the meeting came up with a couple of adjustments or recommended a couple of adjustments to the Silver Lake budget, which would result in a $1.6 million adjustment to their total budget. Their total budget order of magnitude is $30 million plus. And that was voted and accepted. So that $1.6 million reduction results in a $915,000 or so reduction to the assessment for Kingston. At the same time, he put on the table a recommendation that the Kingston local budget should be reduced by about $1.5 million. That number is still up in the air. The official number is they're working the number at the school administration is working the numbers for what they would recommend of budget reductions for the Kingston schools of approximately that amount by line item. Then it'll be up to the Kingston local school committee to approve those amounts. The long and short of it, if all shakes out, I believe that we're looking at a minimal. If we can get to this point, I'd be excited. Like I said, the original pass was almost a 15% increase in school budgets for the town. The targets, what they're trying to get to now would be just about 5%. And if we can get to 5%, then I think that that's, considering that the rest of the departments are at about 5%, it may be the best we're going to be able to do. And at 5%, the excess levy capacity is at a reasonable amount.
So we started at 15% increase, maybe we'll get to a 5%. What's the dollar amount for a 5%?
For the local school reduction would probably be around $1.5 million.
That's what it would go up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the reduction from what we have now. What the actual,
Because I'm just looking at the, here, it was the line item was put in at 2.5% increase for 337,000. So I mean, what are we like, million, 2 million, 3 million?
the preliminary town budget for and we have to, I guess I didn't start right. We have to look at education in total. We can't look at the assessment and local comparisons separately. That they have done so many reclassifications that you have to add together last year's assessment and local budget, and then the FY 25 assessment and local budget and compare the bottom lines. The bottom line increase that we had in this budget book was 831K, 2.9%. Okay. If we
For
can,
everything, right?
yep.
Okay.
If we get to 5%, it would be about $1.4 million increase versus that 831.
And that's anticipating a reduction in Kingston's by local,
Of,
$1.5 million. Was that was,
slightly more.
so let's just hypothetically say that we're really at an increase of about 3 million. Anticipating the Kingston locals will try to reduce the budget by $1.5 million.
That's correct.
Okay.
That, when that gets presented to us, I was trying to read some of the preliminary numbers. The kind of budget crater that is caused by the state's the state's order that we resituate the Silver Lake preschool programs is gonna make reading this a challenge.
And that,
Perfect time to dump a bunch of stuff in on it.
I can tell you that one is probably less complicated than the rearrangement of special ed.
Well, I think those are connected in ways that are, again, delightfully opaque as they tend to be.
I'm encouraged that enough people are working the problem that there's when you hear that there's a $4 million increase, okay, that would have required a Proposition 2 over. We don't have the capacity for that. But if it gets closer to 2 million, then
But that's us too. You gotta think of the other towns.
Plimpton is already, their school committee is taking some actions, taking some reductions, so that one of the problems we have now is the reductions that Silver Lake has taken, the assessments that result from that. Plimpton is good with the reductions that they're taking on their local schools. Halifax is getting close, okay? So that the reductions they're getting from the assessment and the reductions that they're acknowledging they have to take in their locals, they're getting close. They may be all right. So it's falling back on Kingston. It's the same old story. You never want to be the big boy in the barn. That the numbers are much more significant for us. I do believe that what it's hard to quantify it, but the change of the preschool, okay, is going to have a negative impact on Kingston versus the other two towns. It's going to have a negative impact. Think of it this way: if you, a lot of these costs were being allocated straight on headcount, okay? So that, you know, if you've got 10 people in preschool, 5 of them are in Kingston and 3 of them are in Halifax and 2 are in Plimpton, that's how the costs get allocated. Well, if now they're going to go into the total of the assessment percentage. So now we're going to get 57%, period. And on a pro rata basis, I think that's causing some dollar problems. I'm telling you, they presented a 46-page document to this meeting on Thursday night. I actually got to the point where I can understand generally maybe half of what they're saying. but without being heavily involved in the accounting and the day-to-day activity, it is difficult. There is a gentleman who at one time was on the Halifax Finance Committee with me on my first time around when I was here. He was also on the Silver Lake and the Halifax School Committee. He was also a selectman in Halifax. He has done a lot more work than I have in working with the schools to understand all of this. He's telling me that he thinks that, it's shaking out the way it should. Because at one time I thought they had tremendous, I think I said at the last meeting, some errors, mistakes, or whatever. The prior business manager, Christine Healy, has been involved. She hasn't found anything. An example of the types of things they were explaining the other night is in FY 24, the current year, they've hired about 10, 12 people in special ed, mostly paraprofessionals, okay? That, they're not paid a lot, probably paid 30, 35,000, but the total number adds up to about $500,000, okay? So in effect, that 500 gets carried forward to your FY 25 budget. Even though it wasn't in the 24 budget, it's being covered one way or another, but then it gets carried forward. They've also got, right now, they've got overruns in the current fiscal year that are going to add up to $1 million. And they're using circuit breaker that,
They were over 900 last year.
yeah. And the circuit breaker that comes in a year in arrears, okay, is what will cover that this year, they're saying. And so what happens though, and I think you've got a new business manager, so maybe some of these things that have happened previously aren't going to happen the next time around because you're going to budget for it, and that's how you end up with a $4 million increase. But that's, I've probably explained it in a little more detail than I should at this stage. When I scheduled us to talk about this, I thought that we were going to be further along. But the fact that the local Kingston School Committee meeting to review the budget is now going to approve the budget is now going to be April 2nd.
Oh, geez.
Okay, so one of the things that the town administration is considering moving town meeting a week. I don't know why if you're gonna move it a week, I thought you might as well move it 2 or 3 weeks. But I think you run into problems. They're still trying to have the town meeting before the election. And then you've got Memorial Day weekend coming. So that one of the things that I'm going to suggest tonight, if we can consider our meeting of April 2nd, when April 2nd, April 3rd. Okay. April 3rd, I had said review school budgets and warrant articles. I'd like to keep that meeting on in order to review warrant articles and capital plan. And if we can do some of the school, great. But if we can't, then perhaps consider another meeting, April 10th, to do the schools review. Okay. So I wish I could be more definitive, but I think that I have some faith that we may end up closer to where we want to be than I would have thought 3 days ago.
And from from you looking at it, you had a higher number, whatever that number was, I don't need to know. So anything less than that is good. I'm looking at, we used to talk about school budgets increasing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now we're talking millions. We've got 5% increases across the board with general town budgets and maybe school budgets, it could be more, that are just second nature now. It's not sustainable. I mean, we're barely gonna get through, if we even get through 25 with any levy capacity left, then you add, I mean, I was pleased, I guess you'd say, to hear that planning's cutting back a person to part-time, because is pleased that they're cutting it back, but not pleased because that means nothing's happening in town. There's no revenue coming in. There's no return on investment. We're putting it out, we're getting nothing in return.
Can I piggyback on what you just said for 1 second? Because I agree with every word of that. But when now, not only are you talking about, and absolutely rightly, going from 6 figures to 7, we are also now, and I understand there's some unusual stuff going on, but we're also at a second straight year, and I worked on those budgets for 5 years, and I do not remember this being the case, where we had these wild fluctuations later and later and later into the process. Where we are coming, we had this giant meeting in that room over there last year. We got told all sorts of things, and then that magically got transmuted within hours. And now we're talking about this sort of thing, and we're pushing back and pushing back and pushing back. And I understand that for a number of legal reasons, there's an extent to which this is inevitable. But I feel like I gotta say, given my background, it feels like it's getting worse at a worsening rate.
And that's it, without revenue, I mean, without new revenue, new growth coming to town, you're talking cuts. I mean, you should be talking cuts. I'm not saying today, but what are the alternatives?
One of the things that I have asked a question, and you might know this, but I've said, hey, what happens if the finance committee determines that we're comfortable with all of the budgets except the school budget? And we either want to cut the school budget or we just won't support the school budgets. Can we have 2 articles, a budget article for everybody except schools and a budget article for schools?
Yes.
And I believe, and I was told, yes, I think you can.
And we have actually done that.
Okay.
There was one year that the school budgets, it could have been Silver Lake, that it was in such a flux that it was split out into 2 separate articles.
The other thing that I believe strongly, and I'll continue to research it, but that we as a finance committee can take a local school budget to town meeting that differs from what the local schools recommend, what the school committee recommends, okay? However, I'm not sure that we can do that with the assessment because of the fact that the 3 towns are so tied together.
Yeah.
Okay, so that,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm very reluctant to think that the finance committee would go to town meeting with a number that was different from what the selectmen and the town administration and the school administration were trying to work it to get to a number that we can all support. But at the same time, I sympathize and I agree that, you know, one of these years we got to do something. That's why I've asked the question, hey, if the finance committee wants to recommend a budget that's less, then we, you know, I'll put that on the table. But again, I'm afraid we have to wait another couple of weeks until we get numbers that are more final. I'm telling you, I've seen numbers change by a significant number in 24 hours. And you,
Hopefully
your
downward.
your background, you'd probably say the same thing I do. How reliable, how much comfort can I have with numbers when they change like that? So that's what I have to give you on the school update. I think a lot of it is going to come down to what our local school committee is willing to do, is comfortable doing.
And is this, are we gonna ask the town, are we gonna challenge the town? Okay, let's say the school comes in at 5%. Are we comfortable saying, okay, then general government can go up, then town of Kingston go up 5%? There's no more 2.5%, 3%. It's like, we're increasing by percentages.
At this stage of the game, I, as just one member of the committee, if the schools were at 5%, I'd be comfortable with the total budget. If the schools were at 3%, then I wouldn't be comfortable with 5% from everybody else.
Then does 5% now become our norm
I hope
for
not.
each year's increase?
I hope not.
That's my question.
Yeah, I hope it.
But I think there's things bigger than us, right? I mean,
I'm putting the school aside,
Yeah.
okay? Because like to your point, with the assessments, we can either say yes or no. We can't lower, higher, or anything. It's a yes or a no. It's just, we're gonna be double-digit increases
And see.
in a blink of an eye.
And one of the reasons that I'm really working hard with 3 or 4 other key people to resolve this is that if Plimpton and Halifax are really at the point where they're ready to accept the budget,
We're
they
done,
can give me whatever, they can give Kingston whatever.
right?
And we don't have any control.
Right.
So that we need to get to the point, I hope, that Kingston can live with whatever the final number might be. And I've even I've made some suggestions that the original suggestion was that the local schools and Silver Lake should all be having the same budget reduction. So that if Silver Lake's going to do $1.5 million budget reduction, Kingston needs to do $1.5 million. And I said, well, $1.5 million on the Kingston budget is like 8 or 9%. $1.5 million on Silver Lake budget is 4%. You've got to bring that more in line. And so that is still on the table of possibly additional Silver Lake reductions. However, there's some, and I can understand it, it will come down to votes up there.
Carl, if the school budget comes at 5%, with the budgets that are presented, how much levy capacity do we have left? Like, where does that leave us?
A significant number. Yeah, a good number.
But on the flip of that, though that number is good, what does that do to the average taxpayer?
right. The taxes are still going up.
Right.
And by how much?
If I can tell you right now, as long as that question was asked, I'm willing to answer that one. I wasn't going to volunteer it, but if
You already calculated it?
if I had some help with some town officials, if we went with the budget today, okay, without any reductions to the local budget, it would be a $656 average increase per average house. Okay, and the average house in Kingston is valued at $487,000. So for round numbers, a $500,000 house would have an additional $650 taxes annual.
Yeah.
So everybody's in town is making
Which-
6 additional weeks of tax payments.
Which
What
is
that-
10% because the average tax bill is about $6,500. And at that level, the excess levy capacity is pretty much gone.
Yeah, no thanks.
I mean, like you said, we'll
Yeah.
see where we
You know,
end up, but it doesn't look
I'll tell you,
promising.
I got all worked up 2 or 3 nights and trying to figure this out. What would I do? What would we do? But I think it was last night I came to the conclusion that it's just too early. I just don't have enough real final numbers. That it makes a big difference if you know, if the increase is 5% across the board, or the increase is 14% for schools.
Yeah.
And so I think we really have to kind of put it on hold until we see where the local school committee and school administration. I will say one thing, I think the school administration is coming up with, and when I say school administration, I'm talking the Silver Lake superintendent and her crew, working with the principals and directors of special ed, et cetera, to come up with reductions. And if they come up with some recommended reductions, then we maybe got a better chance of the school committee at least listening.
Warrant articles are due tomorrow to the selectman's office. Do we want to entertain asking for a separate article for the school?
In effect, I already have, but that's another piece of paper that I should have made available. I've got a revision of the schedule. I don't know, maybe I don't have it with me. But as part of the proposed changing of the town meeting date, the warrant dates would all change.
Okay.
And by much more than a week. Not sure why, but
Okay.
I think maybe the warrant dates are already behind. And so, but yeah, I will suggest that we ought to have a placeholder in there.
Okay.
For a separate one. I think that's about all I have.
Don't know that I can say much more. Yet, anyway.
Good thing we don't have too much to think
Oh,
about.
here we
right?
go. Closing of the warrant, April 23rd. So they slipped it a whole month.
Oh, so okay. So is that been voted on?
No,
Oh.
this is a suggestion.
Okay.
This is closing the warrant article. Finance Committee meet with Board of Selectmen, April 23rd.
So that's back 3 weeks from what we have.
Yeah.
Post warrant, April 25th. Making that awfully close.
Yeah, because it's 2 weeks.
And town meeting, May 18th. If they slip the town meeting 2 weeks, you guys are on your own, because I won't be here May 25th.
Oh, that's Labor Day. I mean, that's Memorial Day weekend too.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, that's.
They can't do that.
No,
And if they
wouldn't
slip,
be wise.
if they slipped it one more week, I wouldn't be here, because I'm gonna be gone for 2 weekends. All right.
All right.
Can I
Thank
have
you for the good news.
I will move the finance committee adjourn at 7:36 PM.
Second.
Kyle,
Michael, I.
David,
Jason, I.
Wayne, I.
Eric, I.
Debbie, I.